Hi everybody, Matt Lawton here, and this is the Astrological Winds channel. Going to take a look at the astrological weather report for the week of January 27th through February 2nd this time. I'll get to the month of February next week because we've got a new moon this week, but also a few other things to talk about. Mercury going into Aquarius, conjuncting Pluto, the new moon, Uranus going direct, which will only leave Jupiter and Mars retrograde. And then next weekend, a really sweet Venus Pluto conjunction. I'm sorry, one more time. Venus Neptune conjunction. Okay. But first, a little business. The Astrological Winds channel is a free video blog that I do on YouTube. I think I'm in my 6th or 7th year now on YouTube. Amazing. It feels like yesterday when I started it on YouTube. And if you have a YouTube account and you like what you see, I'd really like you to become a follower. Getting more followers, but you got to remember to turn your notifications on or you're not going to know when I post the blog, unless you're making a mental note to check every Monday the blog, but also it's still available on podcasts too. It was a podcast for many years before it was a YouTube channel. So it's still out there on podcasts, just the audio version of the very same blog, which actually frees you up if you're doing something else where you can't keep your eyes on it, like driving or whatever, jogging. A good time to catch up on hearing some blog stuff too. Just look up Astrological Winds channel on whatever your favorite blog is. I know it's out there on a bunch of them. Apple I definitely has it. Also, the Astrological Winds channel has its own Instagram page. So that's another place where I post a link every week. Sometimes I post some additional information there. And then the best place to find it besides the channel and being a follower on the channel is on my website, which is www.astrologicalwinds.com. I have on the top, you'll see a blogs tab. You hit that and you'll see not only this week's blog, you'll have this month's blog, this year's blog, some special blogs, usually on mundane stuff, and usually at least 3 months of the weekly blogs prior to that, so you can reference back for a while on that stuff. Plus, I do a weekly calendar page there on astronomical data and Earth holiday data, so real cool stuff to check out every week. And it also has my menu for all my professional services. I've been in a professional astrologer for over 20 years. Had 7 years of training before 10 years of doing astrology, even before that. So I've been doing astrology for like 35 years. And I'd really love to do your chart. I do charts for people who have amazing experiences with them every week practically, and would really like to do yours, or if you know other people that are looking to have their charts done. And I do all kinds of different charts too, so you got to look on the website. I don't want to really turn this into a long infomercial, but there's a whole bunch of different services there. If you're a student too, I'm looking for a couple more students to do a live class, but there are podcast class available, there's tutoring available. If you're a group looking for a workshop, lecture, class, mini readings, things like that, please check the website out. It doesn't hurt to contact me and ask, right? And I can work with you financially too. So really appreciate that. Now, one thing I do ask about the free service for the blog, which actually costs me a little money, is you pass the link along to somebody else when it's done. And I know some of you have done that already. I'd really like you to do it again. Okay. So, all right. This week, let's start right here on Monday. Mercury going into Aquarius, right? And Mercury's strong in Aquarius because Aquarius is an air sign and Mercury's an intellectual planet. So they're both very much, there's a lot of energy that's shared with that energy. And so it gives a very highly logical, intellectual mind. And the Mercury in Aquarius can be very forward thinking in the means of like bringing that stuff out. So it's really good at using technology, at using science, at using mathematical equations, different, the coding, whatever you want to call it, to advance its ideas, which are very idealistic. And that's one of the interesting things about Aquarius is it's fixed air. So it's like these ideas, but they're very fixed. It's very stubborn energy. So when Mercury goes in there, the mind and intellect is really attached to what it believes in. But it's very creative energy too. Remember, the Leo Aquarius axis is the axis of creativity. So this is very creative, intellectual energy, but it's also very alternative. Aquarius is known as an alternative sign, and it will rebel against what it sees as the norm, whatever that may be. And remember, people seem to like claim a word for their side or something. You know what I mean? Like alternative. Let's use that word. That's a triggering word, right? And we got so much we can learn from our own language, about how we, perceive things. Alternative, is not able to be claimed by any particular side, right? Alternative is just looking at something from a different way than the normal or the traditional way of looking at things. So that can be like an infinite amount of ways, you guys. It doesn't mean like everybody looks at something the same way. It's just that different people are looking at things a different way. And that's one of the interesting things about Aquarius, too. It is another dualistic sign. See, there's two things going on here with Aquarius, two little bolts of lightning, right? And they're both brilliant and they're both alternative, but they see things completely in a different way and they can get stubborn about that, about the way they see things. But they both are very highly creative, intellectual energy that's groundbreaking. And one of the cool things about that, about being the air sign, is it can remain objective. Aquarius does not completely shut down input. It actually is really into exchanging ideas with people who have similar points of view and getting new information from them and taking that information and downloading it into their system and upgrading that whole system. So really, very strong there on that level, but and taking that information in. And it does want to constantly feed the mind. It is a very social kind of energy. Now, what's interesting too, and I don't have it here on the board, but on the same day, as soon as Mercury goes into Aquarius, it's going to sextile the North Node, right? And that really puts us in a very social frame of mind. It actually feeds that Mercury Aquarian energy where we really do want to exchange ideas and thoughts with others that have similar positions that we do, especially intellectually. So it's like a really big time. It's a really good time to make new connections socially, especially right at the beginning of these signs. And they can lead to opportunities in the future for us, business opportunities, most likely other opportunities with the sextile to the North Node. So so it's a really potent time. And once again, think about that in that relation to the US right now, going through, a new change of administration. And, once again, two sides of looking, very different sides of looking at things, pretty evenly divided. And yet, like a lot of change is occurring. So this is very, once again, poignant energy, just like all that stuff last week that I talked about with the inauguration, the Sun Pluto and the Mercury Mars and with the Uranus, how like that was very much about like pushing a lot of new ideas. And this fits right in. It continues that story, is my point, which is one of the big things about astrology, that I've made that point to you guys before. It's like that's where the books and the AI and the computers don't see. Like this story is continuing every day. It's handing off from the days before, and only we can live that as humans, both in our individual lives and as a society. And that's why it's better, to get a true reading, even for yourself, from a true professional, because that stuff is not picked up. But like that is the continuing story, and so this is the continuing story socially of what's going on compared to last week, right? And it's taking that energy of this new energy. Now, really interesting, that continues right here on Tuesday with Mercury conjunct Pluto. Mercury conjunct Pluto really narrows the mind. It really focuses it like a laser beam, right? there's two ways that that can go, right? On one level, that's obsessive. If there is something bothering you right now, mentally or intellectually, this energy is going to make you obsessed where you are just not going to be able to drop the ball, like you're not going to be able to let it go. And it can be that stuff where you're literally like gritting your teeth and not being able to go to sleep because there's something that's so intensely triggering in your mind. And the thing with Mercury Pluto, very interesting, even though intellect and the mind being influenced, it's coming from the subconscious, Pluto, subconscious. So it could be tied into some very deep emotional stuff that's never actually been processed, that's still driving this intense obsessive energy to get to the bottom of something, right? Or to prove that you're right. See, this is the energy of coercion too, the energy of propaganda, the energy of trying to prove you're right even if you don't know if you actually are. It's more based on a belief than possibly what is really true because it's coming from the subconscious with Pluto, right? But the good thing about this is if we can discipline ourselves, we can use this energy to focus our mind like a laser beam on anything that we're looking to research, to get to the bottom of, because that's what we're going to want to do. We are fascinated with things right now. So if there's something that you really can, that can be used, that energy early this week to focus in on, that's a positive thing that doesn't have you obsessing and that can really deepen your knowledge, then this is the time to do it. And part of that can be looking into your own mind, looking into your own subconscious and starting to understand some of the energy that does drive your mind to believe what it believes and to get to react the way it reacts. And that kind of thing. We have a lot of power with our words, with this energy, and what we believe in, we want to try to convince others that we're right. And others can see us as being really judgmental, really insensitive, even threatening to them because it can get so intense. So what does that end up becoming? Mental power struggles with Pluto and Mercury, mental power struggles. And we got to be careful because that can trigger even people who have power over us and they can see us as a threat, But very interesting energy how we can use this because it's going to narrow the mind. It's going to make us obsess. It's going to really have the ability to look at things like really with what I called this energy with fine tooth comb, really edit ourselves, So that's the best way to use this energy. Then we've got Wednesday. The big event of the week is the new moon, and it's at 10 degrees Aquarius. So we got more of that Aquarian energy again coming in, right? And the only aspect it's making, and I've got it up here on the board, is a trine to Jupiter, which is a beautiful aspect. The only problem with that is Jupiter is super weak right now. It's retrograde, right? And it's in Gemini, the sign of its detriment. So even though there's going to be a lot of really feel good feelings during this new moon, this, this shows that there's going to be things that are overlooked that will come back in the past. You can also see here, I've got the Mercury Pluto conjunction, 1 degree Aquarius, and then later I'll talk about the Venus Neptune conjunction, 27 degrees of Pisces. But that's kind of our three main things this week: the new moon, three conjunctions, and then that one trine, right? So anyway, new moon, right? We know what that's about by now if you've been watching the channel, right? I mean, even if you haven't been, planting new seeds, new beginnings. So where is 10 degrees in your chart of Aquarius, right? That's the house, and the things that house represents is where you're going to do new start. So it's fourth house, right? If it's fourth house, that means new things with your family, with your home, with your inner self, things like that, right? But so the new moon in Aquarius really is like, I go right back to what I was saying about Mercury. It is seeking like input that is intellectual, that is highly stimulating on the intellectual level. That's what actually brings that moon security. In fact, funny enough, because the moon being the emotions, this is one sign that really sees the emotions as being like disturbing or a problem because it can cloud the intellect and the logic that an Aquarian moon really wants to feel very secure. This is, it wants like reason, it wants logic, and it, like, once and again, that can come across really as cool and reserved intellectually, on that intellectual level, as on the emotional level, almost like an insensitivity towards others, because you're so intent on trying to push these ideals that you have in your logical mind, that you see as something, as an upgrade to what's going on around you. And you're maybe right, but you can see that, those things that, that can get deeply emotional can kind of block that energy. So it's like, so you really kind of, a lot of times, really see that as something weak. And once again, the moon in Aquarius is like, latches that stuff on to some kind of cause. It sees the group as more important than the individual. It is very social, once again, a very social moon, but it really wants to like see like that connection by exchanging lots of ideas that stimulate it within the group context of the subgroup that it belongs to, the subculture that it belongs to, And like, once again, too, when it's exchanging those ideas, it's really willing to take in new stuff into its system. It doesn't throw that system out. It just keeps upgrading it all the time. So that's what this new moon wants us to do. Upgrade in that area of life where that is. And once again, Aquarius sees certain groups or situations as like the underdog in society, and that's who they latch onto. It's an alternative way of looking at things, So, like I said, the only aspect here is a trine to Jupiter, which the moon and sun trine Jupiter is just beautiful. Those are two of the most beneficial aspects they are, because Jupiter is one of the two beneficial planets, right? So usually, first off, it creates a really positive emotional space. People are actually very enthusiastic. They're future looking. They have a lot of hope. They have a bigger vision, right? And once again, you can see how that fits in with a lot of the changes going on in society, especially in the US right now, where people have this bigger hope, And so they have this very warm, positive vibe, and people spread that vibe around. They're willing to give and get benefits from one another. That's one of the great things about this trine. And there's also, once again, it connects in to the Aquarian energy, because there's very much an interest too in advancing our philosophies of life, our values in life, our religion, our spirituality. We're open. Jupiter opens us up, right? And if anything, with Gemini and retrograde, it opens us up too much, because what we may do, once again, with all this energy, is that we have a grand vision for the future, but we may not be taking care of details or even thinking about the details right now. There's a lot of passive energy mixed in right now, where we're just kind of like, oh, we've got a great vision. Isn't this thing just going to take off, And not necessarily so, without taking some kinds of actions. But we have this very positive energy, and and we definitely want to, like, advance things as far as we're concerned. We're trying to bring in growth to ourselves, growth to others, benefits to everybody around us. That's really the vibe of this energy. It really wants to do that. So that means this new moon is actually ruled by Saturn. Okay. Aquarius is one of the two signs that's ruled by Saturn, the higher octave actually of the Saturn sign. So this is one where Saturn is in Pisces right now. Okay. And its only aspect is making is a trine to Mars retrograde, right? So once again, that shows very much that our actions are being driven by our ideals right now, which is really fine and dandy. But a lot of times it's kind of like a take it easy energy. Like, we believe and we think this will just work out, and really might not be putting our nose completely to the grindstone. And that doesn't mean we won't do things during this period with these trines. This is a second trine. You remember the thing with trines, you guys, the energy is flowing and it's harmonious, but only if you go with it. Like, if you can choose to ignore it and life is good. but trines can only be used if you work with them, so if you they have a tendency to make us want to take it easy because things feel like they're going better, and a lot of times we miss how far they can actually take us in that flow. So we've got the ruler of the new moon and the one aspect it's making to another planet are both trines. So like they're both showing there's a passiveness to like a lot of the ideals that we're believing in right now, and that we may not be activating enough on them, and in the long run they may not hold up. All this retrograde energy and all this weak sign energy shows that in the long run, when reality comes in to test some of these greater visions, we may find out they may not hold up. They may have been based on stuff like fear or an emotional response that was taken at a high or low, or at stuff where the information coming in was only looked at the surface, and we didn't see the true consequences of what that was right at the time. So we have to be really, really careful on that level, because this is like, once again, it's like, Pisces, the energy of Saturn is showing us the ideals, and there's two, just like Aquarius, that dualistic thing, and kind of like, oh, and then, we see this grander vision. And isn't it going to work out? And yes, it is. But, so this is like, yeah, this really does favor like a more slow release of energy individualistically during this new moon for yourself. It's the energy of being like more chilled out, like yoga, or Tai Chi, or just taking a walk, But yeah, and a lot of this too will show that once again, we will work for our ideals and we'll work for less. I mean, Mars Neptune is actually willing to even live with less, conserve with less. Like if it believes enough in the ideal, it'll be like, yes, 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 I'll even, make sacrifices to make this happen. So once again, look at where that is in your chart, the 10 degrees of Aquarius, to see which house that is in, and then you'll get an idea of where that's working for you. Now, a couple other things. Thursday, Uranus goes direct, so that will leave only Jupiter and Mars retrograde at this point. And so Uranus goes direct, really, the last 4.5, 5 months while it's been retrograde. What we should really have been thinking, especially with Uranus and Taurus, is new ways to actually deal with the changing economy and finances of life on planet Earth right now. A lot of things shifting. Uranus technology has brought a lot into Taurus, the resource zone, and really shaking it up. Taurus doesn't really like that. It's used to doing things a certain way. So things have really shifted a lot. And this has really been, hopefully, the last 4 or 5 months, you've been thinking about on a personal level different ways to approach resources that are, that where you have some unique talents that can find a niche for yourself and maybe make some more of those resources that may not be as reliable and stable. And I mean, that's the thing. Uranus is going to be direct now until next September 5th, and it will go into Gemini for a little while, but it's going to go back into Taurus. It'll only be at 1 degree Gemini when it goes retrograde next September 5th. So that means it's going to go back into Taurus, which means, yes, we're going to still have another year of unreliable resources, unstable markets, unstable economy, and having to figure out ways. And we're at those critical degrees of Taurus now where we really do need to figure out a way, and a lot of it probably has to do with technology, upgrading your technology, updating the way you do communications, getting your information out there. Because when it goes into Gemini for the next 7 years, that's going to be really where we're going to see a lot of changes. So in society, we can expect a lot of up and down still, like we've had for the last 6 years, a lot of instability with resources, going to the store and not finding the product you want, or finding that it's 25 times more than 25 times more than it was 5 years ago. Anyway, they lie about those inflation rates too. You know it. I know it too, right? Okay. Anyway, but yeah, so this is like, one of those times where we really if we have been thinking about those ways that we can do that. It's time to take action, implement them now, go for it, be your best self, working to try to find those niches that where you can fit in uniquely. And then Saturday, we have Venus conjunct Neptune in Pisces. At the same time, the sun is actually going to be semi-squaring Neptune too. So a lot of Neptunian energy. And so Venus and Neptune represent love, like the lower octave and the higher octave of love, conditional and unconditional love. And when they come together in a conjunction, that means they blend together, and that can be a beautiful thing. It can be soulmate, soul union type connections with other people, but it's also looking at life through rose-colored glasses. We are not being realistic about our relationships. They're very much based on an ideal, which is a beautiful starting point. But we got to understand that a conjunction is a starting point, and it doesn't mean that all the things that can challenge that beautiful vision, those relationships, aren't waiting down the road. So we got to remember we can have some beautiful romantic type moments with our loved ones in nature or doing creative things this weekend. Now, this stokes up creativity too in a very inspiring and imaginative way. And we can go on, really get a lot of creative input and inspiration that we may start to work with, or at least get the ideas. It can also launch us on a spiritual path also, So, I mean, just some really beautiful moments that we can have this weekend. We just have to be aware that we're living kind of in a dreamy world. And it's like, a great weekend for a little bit of escapism from this crazy world. But at the same time, just remember there's going to be tests to all these dreams and visions that we have that await us in reality as soon as we get back to them. So very creative and spiritual energy there, and should make for a beautiful weekend. All right, well, that's what I got for you guys this week. Now, next week, I will do the whole February monthly too. And I do know next week Jupiter will go direct too. And that's one last point. If you've been following astrology for a while, you'll remember that usually at the beginning of the year, when the year turns over, once Uranus has gone direct the last few years, we have like 2 or 3 months where every planet's direct, and it's like full steam ahead. Our plans really can be pushed out into the world. And what great timing that is when the calendar turns over too. And then we're going into a new year. We really feel that energy like of going into something new. Well, this year we're messed up. Mars retrograde is going to stay retrograde until the end of February, and Jupiter is staying retrograde until next week. So kind of like is taking that away. And by the time Mars goes direct, we're going to end up having, I think, both Pluto and Mercury getting ready to go retrograde again. So we're not getting that this year. This is not going to be a year where we get to go full steam ahead when the calendar turns over like we normally do. It's going to be a little bit more of a trying year to even try to get the new things going right away, those new leaves that we kind of all like to make when the new year comes on. So it's not going to be as easy of a ride as it's been with pushing that stuff forward the first part of the year like it's been the last few years. All right, you guys, that's what I got for you. This is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel. This is a free video blog that I do on YouTube. I need you to become a follower if you have a YouTube account. And please don't forget to turn on your notifications so you get to watch it every week, okay? Got hundreds of followers, and I don't think everyone has their notifications on. The other thing is you need to pass it on to somebody else right now, because I just gave you a lot of information for free, and that's the least you can do for me is to pass the link on. And what I'd really like you to do is when you're ready to get a chart read for yourself or someone else, check my website out, www.astrologicalwinds.com. And I have all my different kinds of readings. You're looking for astrocartography, predictive for the next year, an election for the best timing for starting a business or a marriage, all kinds of stuff I can do. Fixed star readings for deeper soul purpose, really getting mystical, things like that. And I've got group stuff, classes, lectures, workshops. If you're someone who wants to be a student, I've got options for that too. And I can work with you financially on that stuff. Also, if you'd like to support the blog monetarily, no donation is too small, even $5. It does cost me a little bit of money to do this every week. My Venmo handle is at Matthew with 2 T's hyphen Lawton, Lauten, capital L. The Cash App is $Matthew Lawton, all one word there. And anybody who contributes any little amount, I really appreciate it so, so much. All right, next week I'll look at February. And like I said, I know Jupiter's going direct, which will be one of the big things, not only of the week, but of the month too. I'll see y'all next week.